Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin.
In the gentle hush of the Amazon, where sunlight drifts through a canopy thick with emerald, the leaves murmur with quiet intention. Each leaf, delicate and yet insistent, catches the light differently, bending and twisting to shape the story of the day. Tiny droplets of morning dew shimmer upon their surfaces, refracting the golden light into soft prisms that move as if breathing. Here in this lush expanse, the forest is alive not only in sound but in subtle gestures, invisible to most eyes but deeply felt by those who pause and listen. The whispers of the leaves are not made of sound alone. They are encoded in movement, in the tilt and curl of green surfaces, in the faint shimmer that ripples across their veins. Scientists have begun to understand that plants, silent yet profoundly communicative, speak a language of survival and care, a network older than humanity itself. As the sun rises higher, shadows shift gently across the forest floor, revealing patterns of light that pulse like soft heartbeats. Each leaf reacts in its own rhythm, adjusting to angles of light, moisture, and warmth. Some leaves fold slightly, reducing their surface to conserve water, while others stretch wider, greedily absorbing the rays that nourish the chlorophyll within. Chlorophyll, the green essence of life, is more than a pigment. It is a portal to the energy of the sun, transforming photons into the quiet flow of sugar and sustenance that feeds the intricate web of life surrounding it. In this alchemy, leaves are both conductors and receivers, sensing their environment in ways that seem almost aware, almost intentional, a subtle cognition woven into the green fabric of existence. Tiny hairs along the edges of leaves detect the faintest movement in the air, the whisper of an insect passing, the hint of rain on the horizon. Some plants release aromatic chemicals in response, warning nearby companions of threats or attracting allies in the form of pollinators. This chemical conversation is invisible, intangible, yet essential. The forest pulses with these messages, a complex network that rivals any communication humans have devised, operating silently and persistently. Each leaf participates, a node in a living matrix, interpreting light, moisture, and touch, and translating these signals into growth, defense, or outreach. Observing this, one might feel the pulse of intelligence spread across the forest like a gentle tide, subtle but undeniable. Beneath the canopy, seedlings push through the soft, loamy soil, tentative in their gestures yet determined. Their tiny leaves, fresh and pale, sense the shadows cast by the towering giants above. They bend toward gaps where sunlight filters down, negotiating space with a quiet patience. Roots, hidden beneath the earth, mirror this dance in silence, exploring the nutrient-rich soil, communicating through chemical signals, forming alliances with fungi in networks that some scientists call the Wood Wide Web. In these subterranean connections, messages travel, warning of drought, sharing the bounty of minerals, even coordinating growth. Leaves above and roots below are part of the same silent symphony, each movement a note, each tilt or fold a verse, together composing the slow, deliberate poem of survival. If you drift deeper into the forest, you notice that the leaves differ not only in shape and size, but in subtle responses to their environment. Some shimmer slightly when touched by the smallest breeze, while others seem steadfast, resisting the wind with quiet resilience. This variation is not random, it is adaptation in action. Certain species have evolved leaves with surfaces so reflective that they reduce heat absorption, protecting delicate internal cells from the sun's intensity. Others secrete minute droplets of nectar or oils, inviting beneficial insects while deterring hungry herbivores. Even the timing of leaf growth is orchestrated, with some unfurling in the soft blush of dawn and others waiting until dusk to minimize exposure to the harshest elements. In every gesture there is an underlying rhythm, a dialogue between the leaf and the forest, subtle and constant, a language that speaks in the silence of green. During the quiet of midday, shadows shift and the forest seems to breathe. Tiny movements become visible when one is patient, leaves tilting ever so slightly toward one another, as if leaning in to listen. There is a resonance, a shared awareness among neighbors, mediated by the exchange of chemicals through the air or the soil. In some experiments, scientists have observed that when one plant is attacked by insects, nearby plants increase their production of defensive compounds, almost preemptively, as if hearing a whispered warning. The communication is precise, not in words but in action, a subtle choreography that unfolds over hours and days. Each leaf participates in this intricate ballet, an unspoken agreement of survival, cooperation, and resilience. In the soft humidity, droplets gather and trickle along the veins of leaves, forming miniature rivers that nourish the surface and feed the microorganisms residing there. Tiny communities of bacteria, fungi, and microscopic creatures flourish in these spaces, forming relationships with their leaf hosts. Some bacteria protect against pathogens, some fungi assist in nutrient exchange. The leaf, while stationary and seemingly passive, is thus a bustling ecosystem unto itself, alive with activity, a microcosm of the forest at large. Observing this, one begins to see the forest as a living poem, each leaf a stanza, each tree a chapter, each canopy a verse, flowing gently in the rhythm of sunlight and shadow. As afternoon wanes, the forest light softens, filtering in golden shafts through gaps in the canopy. Leaves catch these rays, bending, tilting, and quivering in delicate response. Some release fragrances into the air, unnoticed by most, yet guiding pollinators to flowers hidden in the greenery. Others shimmer as a subtle response to changes in temperature, signaling readiness to conserve energy or prepare for evening rest. The intelligence of the leaves is quiet but persistent, a lifelong conversation with the environment. In this, one senses a kind of patience impossible to mimic in human time. A deliberate, unhurried comprehension of the world unfolding in infinite, gentle iterations. Night approaches slowly, and the forest begins to shift into softer rhythms. Photosynthesis slows as light wanes, yet the communication continues. Chemical signals travel invisibly through air and soil, leaves continuing to share information with one another and with the roots below. Some species fold their leaves to reduce moisture loss, while others maintain their positions, steady and vigilant. The forest exhales, a subtle release of gases and scents, a quiet testament to the cycles of life that persist even in the absence of sunlight. Observing these rhythms, one is reminded that leaves are more than passive observers of their environment. They are active participants in a vast, interconnected system, speaking in a language of light, moisture, movement, and scent. As the night deepens, the canopy becomes a quilt of shifting silhouettes, each leaf tracing its own delicate arc against the darkening sky. Tiny creatures move among them, insects and small mammals, adding their own rhythms to the forest's subtle chorus. The leaves respond, swaying gently, protecting, shading, or supporting, silently acknowledging the presence of life around them. Even in darkness, the conversation persists, mediated by touch, by scent, by the faintest vibrations traveling through air and stem. This is the secret language of the leaves, unspoken yet eloquent, a continuous exchange that has persisted for millennia, long before humans arrived to listen, and will continue long after, a soft and enduring murmur of life. By the quietest hours, when the moonlight filters through the canopy in pale silver streams, one can almost imagine the forest breathing as a single organism. Leaves shimmer faintly in this nocturnal glow, responding to shifts in temperature, humidity, and the presence of creatures moving silently below. Each leaf, though separate, is attuned to the collective rhythm of the forest, participating in the slow, intricate dialogue that sustains life here. This conversation is patient, timeless, unhurried, a whisper of intelligence woven into green veins, a lullaby of survival and connection. In the stillness, one may sense the profound serenity of knowing that even in silence, communication persists, a secret language beneath the canopy, gentle, persistent, and alive. Let's drift deeper now, into the intricate inner world of the leaf, beyond the visible green and into the labyrinth of cells and signals. Within each leaf lies a delicate infrastructure, unseen but precise. There are veins that transport water with quiet urgency, xylem channels pulling moisture up from the roots, defying gravity through tension and cohesion. Alongside them, the phloem carries sugars created from light, distributing nourishment throughout the plant's body. And surrounding these vessels are layers of cells filled with chloroplasts, tiny green organelles that shimmer softly in the sunlight. These chloroplasts are like miniature solar panels, but instead of electricity, they capture light and transform it into life. And all of this tiny, hidden orchestra, plays in perfect rhythm every second, every day. Scientists have marveled at how sensitive leaves are, how acutely aware they are of their surroundings. One might not expect a leaf to notice when a caterpillar lands or when a breeze carries with it the scent of danger, yet many leaves do. Specialized receptors can detect touch, pressure, even certain airborne molecules. And when they do, something astonishing happens. An electrical signal pulses through the plant's body, a message sent not T. Rough nerves, but through changes in membrane potential. In some ways, it is like a thought, a flicker of awareness that travels, prompting a response. The leaf may release bitter chemicals to deter its attacker or strengthen its cell walls to prepare for defense. This signaling system is slow compared to animal nerves, but no less real. It is the plant's way of knowing, a soft, slow intelligence unfolding in green silence. The Amazon rainforest, thick with layers upon layers of vegetation, hums with this silent exchange. Leaves on the canopy feel the full force of the sun and wind, while those below bathe in filtered light, adjusting their angles to catch just enough photons to survive. Some leaves are broad and flat, acting as solar sails. Others are narrow and waxy, adapted to shed excess water and reflect harsh light. Even their surfaces are a marvel. Some are coated with microscopic bumps that repel water, keeping them dry and clean. Others are smooth and sticky, designed to trap pollen, spores, or even small creatures. It is not chaos. It is architecture in motion, a living, breathing design that evolves not for beauty, but for purpose. In the spaces between leaves, light filters like golden dust and life flourishes. Tiny frogs rest on the surface of leaves, their skin absorbing moisture and chemicals. Ants march across their ridges, following invisible trails of scent. Butterflies pause to warm their wings in small sunlit patches. Each interaction triggers a cascade of microscopic responses within the leaf, changes in temperature, touch, humidity. And though the leaf cannot flee or speak, it can respond. Its pores, called stomata, open and close with careful precision, releasing oxygen, absorbing carbon dioxide, and controlling the flow of water vapor. These pores are not random. They are responsive. They open wider in humid air and tighten during drought. And the decisions, if we may call them that, are not made in a brain, but in the integration of signals across thousands of cells, each responding to cues as part of a collective awareness. There is a poetry in the way light moves through a leaf. Not all photons are treated equally. Leaves absorb red and blue light most eagerly. These are the wavelengths most useful for photosynthesis. Green light, ironically, is often reflected, which is why leaves appear green to our eyes. But some plants, especially those in the dim underlayers of the forest, have evolved pigments that capture every sliver of available light, making use of reds, oranges, even the faint blues that bounce off bark and mist. Their leaves may be tinged with purple or bronze, rich in anthocyanins that offer both function and color. In these pigments, science meets art, a fusion of need and expression that dances in the canopy and the shadowed floor alike. Over time, a leaf's life is shaped by its challenges: wind, drought, insect, sun. A torn edge, a scar from a hungry beetle, a spot of fungus that blooms like a quiet bruise. Yet even these marks tell a story of resilience, of adaptation. Some plants grow new leaves constantly, shedding the old-like skin. Others protect each leaf for months or even years, covering them in waxes, thorns, or toxic oils. There is wisdom in this strategy, a balancing act between energy gained from light and energy spent on defense. In the Amazon, where competition is fierce and every patch of light is precious, leaves must be both delicate and strong. Their survival is not guaranteed by strength alone, but by their ability to sense, to adapt, and to communicate, to whisper to one another through time and space. Consider the Mimosa pudica, the sensitive plant found often in tropical soils, its fern-like leaves folding inward when touched. It is a marvel of movement in a kingdom we often think of as still. This response is not just defense, it is a message to the world: I am aware, I notice, I react. Inside the stem, water pressure shifts rapidly, collapsing the cells and folding the leaflets like hands at rest. This phenomenon is known as thigmonisty, movement triggered by touch. And though it may seem like a trick or reflex, it is a sign of the broader language that plants use, a language built on physical change, electrical shifts, and chemical messengers, slow but unmistakably alive. Deep in the jungle, where the trees rise like ancient towers and vines curl like question marks, the air is thick with signals. A vine senses the direction of a nearby tree, growing toward it with spiraling tendrils. A leaf detects a rise in carbon dioxide and adjusts its stomata to breathe more efficiently. A flowering plant times its bloom to match the arrival of a particular bee species. None of this is coincidence. It is coordination, born from eons of evolution, refined by the unrelenting pressure to survive and thrive in a world of light and shadow. In laboratories far from the Amazon, scientists now use electrodes to listen to plants. Why measure electrical activity in leaves? Watch calcium waves ripple across cells like neural pulses. Some researchers even suggest that plants have a kind of memory, not in the way we do, but in patterns of response shaped by past experience. A plant exposed to drought may close its stomata more quickly the next time. One that's been grazed may fortify itself sooner. These are not thoughts, perhaps, but echoes, traces of learning etched in chemical flows and cellular architecture. And so when you walk through a forest and feel the soft rustle of leaves overhead, you are walking through a conversation, ancient, ongoing, intricate. You are surrounded by beings who see without eyes, who breathe without lungs, who speak without tongues. Their language is written in molecules, in photons, in movement. And though it is not a language we can hear, it is one we can learn to feel if we slow down, if we listen with more than ears. Even death in the world of leaves is part of the message. When a leaf yellows and falls, it carries nutrients back to the soil, feeding fungi and microbes who in turn nourish roots, who send signals to seeds who grow new leaves. It is a cycle, gentle and eternal, where nothing is wasted and everything, even decay, is communication. Some leaves fall in spirals, others in silence. Some return to the earth softly, others are carried away by rivers, their stories drifting on water to new shores. But all of them speak in their final act, a soft farewell and a gift to those who remain. There is no hurry in the life of a leaf. It unfurls with care, soaks in sunlight with reverence, weathers storms with grace, and falls when its time is done. And in every phase it listens, to light, to wind, to touch, to time. The language of leaves is not one of words, but of presence, of quiet awareness that persists whether we witness it or not. It is a whisper from the green world, patient and profound, a reminder that even in stillness there is meaning, and even in silence there is song. Beyond the quiet conversation of leaves lies the rhythm of the forest itself, a cadence set by sunlight, rain, and the passage of time. In the Amazon, the canopy forms a green ceiling that filters every photon, every drop of rain, creating a mosaic of microclimates below. Beneath the tall emergent trees, young saplings stretch toward the fractured light, bending and twisting as if trying to trace the invisible lines of energy that pass through the leaves above. Each leaf in these saplings has a distinct purpose, shaped by the subtle pressures of its surroundings. Some spread wide to catch rare beams of sunlight, others stay narrow, conserving moisture in the humid, dripping air. Even the tiniest leaf can influence the airflow, altering the movement of seeds, spores, and insects that flit through the understory. It is in these details that the forest's intelligence becomes apparent. A leaf does not exist alone. It is a node in a vast network, connected by roots, fungi, and chemical signals. Mycorrhizal networks thread through the soil, invisible yet omnipresent, linking trees, shrubs, and smaller plants into a communication web. When one tree suffers from drought, it can release chemical signals through these fungal threads, warning neighbors to conserve water. When a leaf is bitten by a caterpillar, it can produce molecules that travel underground, summoning protective organisms or signaling to distant leaves to fortify themselves. And above ground, volatile compounds waft through the air, reaching leaves and flowers that may be meters away. The forest is alive in ways that are subtle and profound, with each leaf acting as both messenger and recipient, contributing to a dialogue that spans seasons, storms, and centuries. Sunlight moves across the canopy in gentle arcs, shifting hour by hour, day by day. Leaves track this movement with a precision that seems almost conscious. Some species can twist their petioles, tilting the leaf blade to follow the sun's path, maximizing photosynthesis while avoiding overheating. Others adjust chloroplast positions within cells, moving like dancers to optimize light capture. There is a choreography here, a slow-motion ballet invisible to the casual observer, where every adjustment matters. Even the shadows cast by one leaf upon another are deliberate, influencing growth patterns and chemical production. It is a world of cause and effect, of feedback loops that intertwine light, energy, and life. Water, too, weaves through the forest with remarkable grace. Rainfall does not simply wet the leaves and soil, it triggers a cascade of responses. Drops hitting the leaf surface can stimulate electrical changes, prompt stomata to adjust, and wash away debris or harmful microorganisms. Some leaves are hydrophobic, forcing water into beads that roll gently to the forest floor, where it nourishes roots and soil organisms. Others absorb moisture directly, supplementing rainfall with atmospheric humidity. In the Amazon, where precipitation can be torrential, leaves act as both guardians and conduits, managing water flow, filtering sunlight, and shaping microenvironments that support life at every level. The textures of leaves are equally astonishing. Some are smooth and glossy, reflecting light and shedding water with effortless grace. Others are hairy or rough, capturing dust, spores, or dew, creating tiny ecosystems on their surfaces. Tiny insects crawl along these surfaces, fungi colonize in invisible colonies, and bacteria form microscopic communities, all interacting with the leaf as both host and participant. Even the slightest vibration, caused by wind, a passing animal, or a falling raindrop, triggers responses within the leaf, a ripple of awareness that spreads to other parts of the plant. In this, the leaf becomes both stage and performer, hosting life while actively engaging with it. Chemical communication among leaves is particularly remarkable. Volatile organic compounds are released into the air when leaves are stressed, signaling threats or changes in the environment. Some molecules repel herbivores, others attract predators of the attackers, and still others prompt neighboring leaves to strengthen their defenses. These chemical messages travel across meters and even decades, influencing plants that may be far removed yet genetically predisposed to recognize the signals. In this network of scent and reaction, the language of leaves becomes something approaching conversation, a dialogue conducted not with sound, but with molecules, time, and responsiveness. Life in the canopy is not static. Leaves age, adapt, and sometimes sacrifice themselves for the greater forest. A yellowing leaf may still contribute to the ecosystem, returning nutrients to the soil, feeding decomposers, or even signaling the change of seasons. Fallen leaves carry messages embedded in their chemicals, guiding seed germination, feeding fungi, or shaping microbial communities that determine which plants will thrive next. Each leaf is both individual and collective, part of a system that transcends singular existence. And in these cycles, there is a quiet intelligence, not in thought perhaps, but in the precise, interconnected rhythms that sustain life. The relationship between leaves and light is central to this intelligence. Light determines growth, signaling, and survival, yet leaves manage it delicately. Too much sun can damage photosynthetic structures, while too little starves the plant of energy. Leaves respond by producing pigments like carotenoids, flavonoids, and anthocyanins, which protect against excess light, deter herbivores, and attract pollinators. Some species even shift the color of their leaves seasonally, signaling readiness for reproduction or survival strategies. These adaptations are both functional and communicative, a merging of biology and silent messaging. Temperature and airflow are also critical. Leaves sense warmth, cool, humidity, and pressure, adjusting their opening, angle, or chemical output accordingly. The gentle sway of the canopy in the wind, the heat of midday, and the chill of nighttime are all noted by these green observers. Some leaves close to conserve water, others flutter to enhance gas exchange. These adjustments, subtle yet continuous, maintain homeostasis within the plant and, by extension, the forest ecosystem. Each leaf's micro-decisions ripple outward, influencing neighbors and entire layers of flora. Beyond their biological function, leaves also embody stories of resilience. Scars, holes, and nibbles speak to battles endured and strategies employed. Leaves that survive hail, wind, or predation adapt, transmitting lessons through biochemical changes that affect future growth. In this sense, the life of a leaf is a record, a chronicle of interactions, threats, and responses. And though leaves do not write with pen or record with memory in human terms, their existence inscribes knowledge into the fabric of the forest. Each scar, each edge curled in response to stress, contributes to the collective wisdom of generations of plants. Leaves also participate in a form of temporal communication. Their cycles of growth, maturity, and decay align with daily, seasonal, and annual rhythms. Photoperiods dictate flowering and dormancy, while temperature cues influence metabolic rates. Leaves sense these patterns and act accordingly, opening and closing, producing chemicals, or shedding themselves in synchrony with environmental cues. The forest itself becomes a vast living calendar, each leaf a page that marks time, adaptation, and continuity. Even human presence alters these dynamics. Footsteps, light, sound, and even chemical traces left behind influence the microclimate around leaves. Some plants respond to touch or vibration, subtly adjusting physiology in response to a nearby presence. Researchers have observed that leaves can modify transpiration, chemical output, and even growth direction when humans or animals interact with them. Though these responses are not conscious in the human sense, they are deeply responsive, a testament to the sensitivity and adaptability encoded in leaves over millennia. Consider the myriad forms of leaves, from needle-like conifers to broad tropical canopy leaves. Each shape represents evolutionary compromise, balance between light capture and water loss, between defense and growth, between structure and flexibility. Even within a single tree, leaves may differ based on their position. Upper canopy leaves are often thicker, tougher, and more sun-protective, while lower leaves are thinner, more delicate, and optimized for low-light conditions. This variability is a strategy, a way to communicate internally within the plant, to adapt its functions to a spatial hierarchy that maximizes survival and energy efficiency. At night, leaves continue their silent vigilance. They adjust to temperature drops, minimize water loss, and maintain the flow of nutrients. Some leaves even close or orient themselves differently, creating patterns invisible to the day-bound eye. Nighttime is not a pause but a continuation of their activity, a time when internal processes dominate and the exchange of signals persists unseen. The forest under moonlight becomes a subtle symphony of ongoing awareness, each leaf performing its part in a rhythm beyond human perception. Finally, when a storm arrives, leaves react collectively. Rain lashes their surfaces, winds twist and bend their stems, lightning casts sudden light across the canopy. Some leaves are torn, others shed to reduce drag and damage, yet these sacrifices are calculated, almost choreographed. Each leaf responds to its immediate conditions, but also to the collective movement, reducing risk for the plant and for neighboring flora. In this, the forest demonstrates resilience and adaptability, a living network of responses where every leaf contributes to the endurance of the whole. In every whisper of the Amazon leaves, there is a message, a story of survival, adaptation, and connection. They speak of light and shadow, of wind and water, of predators and allies. They record cycles, convey warnings, and maintain equilibrium. And though we cannot hear them with ears attuned to sound, we can read them with eyes attuned to observation, with hearts attuned to wonder. Leaves remind us that communication is not limited to voice or language, that intelligence can be slow, silent, and profound. And in their quiet persistence, they invite us to slow down, to listen, and to recognize that. To recognize that stillness does not mean silence, and silence does not mean absence. The Amazon is filled with voices too slow for our ears, too fine for our instruments, too ancient for our memories. Yet they persist, they breathe, they guide. And if we are quiet enough, truly quiet, we might sense them not with our minds, but with something deeper. The leaves do not demand to be heard, they invite. They do not shout, they shimmer. And in that shimmer is the wisdom of thousands of years, encoded in chlorophyll, in cellulose, in the dance between sunlight and shadow. There is comfort in knowing that such intelligence exists, not in machines or cities, but in every corner of green that surrounds us. A single leaf fluttering in a forgotten breeze carries within it more than we can ever name: the weight of seasons, the memory of rain, the pattern of light that fed its veins, and the resilience of life that refused to end. It is a soft miracle, repeated endlessly in the quiet places of the world, whispering not to impress, but to remind us that everything living speaks. The question is only, are we listening? And as we step away from the forest path, as the final leaves rustle above in farewell, the language of the leaves follows us not in sound, but in rhythm, in how the wind feels softer, in how the light bends gently, in how we notice, even just once, a moment of green catching gold. That is how they speak, not through grammar or sound, but through feeling, through presence, through grace. We do not need to translate the language of leaves to understand it. We only need to slow down, to observe, to respect, and in doing so we become part of their story, not as intruders, not as masters, but as companions, listeners, students. Carried by the same breath that moves the canopy and silences the world for a moment, we walk onward with something new resting quietly inside us, a deeper awareness, a softer way of seeing. And when we next see a leaf, in a garden, on a trail, by a window, perhaps we will no longer see just a shape or color. Perhaps we will see a being in conversation with the light, a quiet sentinel exchanging messages in molecules and motion. Perhaps in that stillness we will remember the forest, the one that breathes, that dreams, that whispers, and we will understand no. Tea with words, but with something older than speech, that we were never truly alone in the green. This is the secret language of the leaves, a murmur that encircles the earth, a chorus of resilience, a lullaby of connection, and though it needs no translation, it leaves an imprint soft, steady, and unforgettable upon all who take the time to truly listen. Imagine a river winding through the landscape, not as a simple stream of water, but as a keeper of time. Its surface shimmers with reflections of clouds, sunlight, and the occasional bird dipping its wings into the cool flow. But beneath this gentle mirror lies a vast memory, encoded in the movements of molecules, the patterns of sediment, and the rhythm of currents. The river remembers the rain that fed it days ago, the snow that melted long before spring awakened, and the quiet footsteps of animals that touched its banks. Every ripple carries a story, every swirl a lesson, and every bend a whisper from the past, flowing endlessly toward the future. As the river travels, it interacts with countless lives. Microscopic plankton drift lazily, feeling the gentle tug of water and light. Tiny fish navigate its currents, learning the paths of safety, shelter, and sustenance. Leaves that fall from distant trees join the river's journey, carrying the scent of forests, the weight of sunlight, and the quiet knowledge of photosynthesis. The river holds all of this within its moving body, a living library of experiences that merge and separate, dissolve and return. It is as if the water itself thinks in a language of flow, a syntax of motion, a poetry written in eddies and waves. There is a science to remembering, even in water. Researchers speak of hydrological memory, the way rivers retain the influence of previous rains, seasons, and climatic events. When a storm passes upstream, the downstream river does not forget. It carries the memory of that rain in its height, its velocity, and the minerals it gathers along the way. This is not memory like ours, measured in neurons and synapses, but in resonance, in response, in subtle transformations of flow. The river absorbs information, stores it in its motion, and expresses it again when the world requires, in a flood, a calm, or a whispering murmur through reeds and stones. Let's drift deeper into this idea that rivers act as both witnesses and narrators of the landscapes they traverse. They record not only water, but the patterns of soil, the cycles of vegetation, and the migrations of animals. Each bend of a river can tell you where the earth is soft, where rocks resist, and where life has adapted to thrive in motion. A scientist studying sediments might read centuries of weather in the layers of silt, each particle a syllable, each deposit a line of verse. And though we cannot hear the river speak as humans do, we can feel its memory in the damp air, the moist soil, and the quiet pulse that ripples through every living thing nearby. Rivers are also teachers of patience and persistence. The water flows not in a straight line, but in loops, spirals, and arcs, negotiating every obstacle with gentle determination. It learns from resistance, shaping valleys, carving stone, and forming channels that will outlast generations of trees, animals, and even humans. There is poetry in this persistence. The river does not demand recognition, it does not rush, it simply continues, a continuous story told in motion. And as we observe it, we begin to understand that life itself is a series of small, persistent acts, each carrying echoes of what came before, each shaping what will follow. Consider the life within the river. Fish that navigate using chemical cues, insects that emerge from their watery homes to dance in the sunlight, and amphibians that rely on seasonal memories of water levels to time their migrations and breeding. All of these creatures are participants in the river's memory. They read it, respond to it, and contribute to it, forming an intricate network of interaction. The river is alive not just in its molecules, but in the lives it supports, a flowing ecosystem that remembers and teaches in cycles of growth, decay, and renewal. And yet, rivers do not speak only to the creatures that inhabit them. They communicate with the land itself. The erosion of banks, the deposit of sediments, the shaping of deltas, all these are forms of dialogue between water and earth, subtle conversations that last centuries. Mountains are carved, plains are enriched, and coastlines are defined by these endless exchanges. The river's memory is written in rock and sand, not on paper, not in digital archives, but in a language older than human thought. If we are quiet, patient, and observant, we can learn to read this language, understanding the history of the landscape without ever speaking aloud. There is also a gentle lesson in humility within rivers. Despite their power, their persistence, and their role as witnesses, they follow the natural course dictated by gravity, the lay of the land, and the climate above. They cannot rush what must take time. They cannot force what is not ready. And in their humility, we see the balance between power and patience, action and stillness. The river reminds us that true understanding comes not from forcing outcomes, but from observing, responding, and flowing with the rhythm of the world. Now imagine standing at the river's edge at dawn. Mist rises from the surface, curling like soft smoke, illuminated by the first light of the sun. The air is cool and carries the scent of wet earth and green growth. In this moment, the river's memory seems almost tangible. You can sense the countless droplets that once fell as rain, the tiny lives that traversed its currents, and the slow, inexorable shaping of valleys and banks. It is not just water, but a living history, a soft chronicle that moves, breathes, and reflects the life around it. And as we watch, we notice the delicate interactions that give the river its character. A fallen branch redirects a miniature current, altering the paths of fish and sediment alike. A school of minnows creates ripples that change the surface reflection of sunlight. The river adapts to these small disturbances, incorporating them into its flow without complaint or hurry. It is a reminder that memory is not static, it is dynamic, shaped by interactions, resilient, yet ever sensitive to change. The river also offers a meditation on time itself. Its movements are immediate, yet the consequences of its flow extend far beyond what we see. A flood upstream might deposit nutrients for fields miles away. A dry season leaves a memory imprinted in the stones and sand, felt by plants and animals long after the water recedes. The river teaches us that every action, no matter how subtle, resonates. Time is not only linear but accumulative, layered, and remembered in ways that are gentle, persistent, and enduring. In quiet moments, the river whispers of cycles and connections. The water that nourishes a tree today may have fallen as rain in another season, in another forest, touched by clouds that formed thousands of miles away. The river remembers these journeys, carrying the essence of landscapes far and wide. It is both a mirror and a messenger, reflecting the skies above and the history of the lands it passes. And in listening, we begin to feel our place in this greater story, a small, attentive part of a vast, flowing memory. So we follow the river step by step, allowing its rhythm to guide our awareness. Each bend, each ripple, each shimmering reflection teaches patience, attentiveness, and wonder. The river reminds us that memory is not only stored in brains or books, but in motion, in interaction, in the subtle persistence of water shaping the world. And if we take this lesson to heart, we can carry the river's wisdom wherever we go, an understanding that life is a series of gentle flows, that memory lives in all things, and that the quiet, persistent stories of the world are waiting for us to notice. These human narratives, just as it does the natural ones, absorbing them quietly into its flow. Each chemical trace, each altered current becomes part of the living memory of the river. It is patient and impartial, recording events without judgment, weaving them into the existing tapestry of time. Over years, patterns emerge, subtle hints of past floods, the slow encroachment of sediment, the echo of ancient paths that water once traveled. The river's memory is not rigid, but adaptive, a continuous archive that adjusts to change while maintaining a sense of continuity, like a slow pulse that never ceases. Beneath the water, sediment layers form a chronological map. Fine particles settle gently during calm periods, while storms stir and rearrange them, creating distinct bands. Scientists call this stratification, but it is also poetry in motion. The river writes in gradients of sand and clay, a language that only patience can read. Fossils and organic matter, long preserved in these layers, offer insights into life that existed long before human memory recorded anything at all. The river teaches us that memory is not always conscious or deliberate. Sometimes it is a quiet accumulation of moments, layered and complex, waiting to be interpreted. Microorganisms contribute to this living archive as well. Bacteria and algae interact with nutrients and sunlight, responding to shifts in temperature, pH, and chemical composition. Their growth patterns, the subtle blooms that color stretches of water, reflect environmental changes over time. These tiny beings, almost invisible to the naked eye, are historians in their own right, documenting the state of the river moment by moment. They transform water chemistry, recycle matter, and influence the very flow of nutrients that sustains the larger ecosystem. In their silent labor, we glimpse the intricate intelligence. Embedded in natural systems, a consciousness that does not need language to record experience. If we drift along the river, we notice how its memory influences the surrounding forest. Moisture patterns determine where plants can thrive. Fallen seeds, carried by currents, germinate in fertile silt downstream, creating forests that echo past floods and droughts. Trees, in turn, shape the riverbanks, stabilizing soils and influencing water flow. Their roots dig deep, sometimes intertwining with buried remnants of previous vegetation, creating a network of past and present life. The river's recollections manifest in these tangible ways, affecting every living being that relies on its presence. It is a shared memory, co-authored by water, earth, and life, a story without words yet rich in detail. Human observers, too, become part of this memory, whether they realize it or not. Fishermen note seasonal changes, farmers watch water levels, children play in the shallows, leaving footprints that wash away but subtly affect sediments. Canoes disturb microcurrents, and voices carried across water linger briefly before dissipating. Each interaction, transient though it may be, is recorded by the river in its own medium. In this way, memory is both personal and collective, intimate yet expansive, spanning generations of life and movement. The river bridges time, connecting those who once walked its banks to those who will someday arrive, offering continuity in a world of constant change. Time itself is folded into the river's memory. Days pass with the sun tracing arcs across water, changing the angle of reflection and the warmth of currents. Seasons shift, alternating between abundance and scarcity, warmth and chill. Each transition is remembered in the living structures of the river, the formation of oxbow lakes, the buildup of floodplains, the gentle erosion of stone faces. Geological and biological processes intertwine, creating a record that is simultaneously scientific and poetic, a reminder that memory need not be stored in paper or brain alone. It exists wherever life interacts with the flow of time and matter. There is a rhythm to this remembering, a pulse that can be sensed if one listens quietly. The gurgle of water over rocks, the hum of insects in the reeds, the occasional splash of a fish, all are notes in a composition that stretches over decades and centuries. Even in moments of apparent stillness, the river continues to process, to integrate, to archive. Its patience is a lesson. Memory does not demand urgency. It accumulates slowly, continuously, ensuring that every event, no matter how small, contributes to the ongoing story. Those who pay attention begin to perceive patterns, ebb and flow, cause and consequence, harmony and disruption. The river also preserves subtle lessons in resilience. Floods may wash away trees and soil, but they deposit fertile sediments that nurture new growth. Droughts may shrink its breadth, yet the organisms that depend on water adapt, leaving traces in the sediment, in burrows, in patterns of survival. In these cycles, memory and adaptation are intertwined. The river reminds us that remembering is not merely a passive act, it informs future possibilities. Knowledge of the past is embedded in the landscape, shaping the potential for what comes next, guiding life in ways both obvious and hidden. In the evening, as light softens and shadows lengthen, reflections dance across the water's surface, mingling sky and river into a single fluid canvas. Birds return to hidden nests, fish seek calmer pools, and the gentle lap of water against stone continues unbroken. The river's memory is present in these quiet moments, unassuming yet profound. It holds the echoes of rainstorms and droughts, the whispers of creatures long gone, and the subtle traces of human footsteps. In this confluence of history and life, the river embodies a timeless witness, a keeper of stories that span both seconds and centuries, urging us to see memory not as a static record, but as a living, breathing process. As night descends, the river becomes a mirror of the stars, each ripple capturing fragments of distant light, just as its depths hold fragments of the past. Bioluminescent microorganisms, unseen during daylight, illuminate the water with soft glows, tiny lanterns marking hidden currents and paths. The river continues to hum its ancient song, an unbroken melody of remembering, recording, and existing. In its flow, we sense the persistence of life and time, the quiet intelligence of nature, and the gentle poetry that arises when observation meets reflection. To watch, to listen, and to drift along with it is to understand memory not as static or fixed, but as a river itself, moving, responsive, and alive. And in these moments, one realizes that memory, like the river, does not demand recognition or applause. It flows quietly, steadily, integrating all that passes into a tapestry of continuity. Every droplet, every leaf, every shadow contributes to the collective story. To immerse oneself in this flow is to experience the calm persistence of life, the beauty of connection, and the gentle reminder that every event, however fleeting, leaves an imprint in the vast, patient archive of the world. The river whispers, and if we are still enough to listen, we understand that it remembers all that has come before, carrying it forward in endless motion. The river does not forget, even when it seems quiet. In the stillness of early morning, when fog hangs like a soft curtain above its surface and birds stir in their hidden nests, the river listens. It absorbs the sounds of the waking forest, the subtle shift in temperature, the returning footsteps of creatures long absent. It holds the echoes of rainfall on distant mountains, of glaciers melting far away, of footsteps along its banks from centuries past. To be near the river is to be near a presence much older than we are, a witness to everything that has passed and everything still unfolding. Every time the river swells after a storm, it relives its own history. The bends that deepen, the banks that overflow, these are not new events but memories revisited. The trees that grow along the edges brace themselves in familiar ways, their roots twisted and prepared by generations of such floods. Seeds buried in the soil respond, germinating only when the water rises just right. Birds build nests in places they know will remain dry. Frogs call out, their chorus perfectly timed with the return of high water. In this living archive, flood is not destruction. It is renewal, remembered and anticipated by those who have lived with the river long enough to understand its rhythm. The indigenous peoples of the Amazon know this memory intimately. Their stories, passed from voice to voice over generations, speak of the river as a living entity, a being with moods, cycles, and ancient wisdom. They navigate by signs others overlook, the slight darkening of water, the direction of wind over a bend, the song of insects at dusk. They remember the great floods, the lean years, the changes in fish migration, not through written texts but through daily life lived in harmony with the river's memory. For them, the river is not a background feature. It is teacher, elder, and companion. In many ways, rivers are emotional landscapes. They carry with them a sense of continuity that is hard to describe, a comfort that no matter how chaotic the world may seem, something still flows with grace. The soft sound of water brushing against rocks, the swirl of eddies behind roots, the slow curve around a sandbar, these are gestures of reassurance. The river reminds us that time moves forward gently, that life is cyclical, and that even the most turbulent moments will smooth themselves into memory. When scientists drop sensors into rivers, they're often trying to decode this memory, tracking salinity, oxygen levels, or temperature gradients. But what they're truly measuring is the river's recollection of change. A drop in temperature can signal snowmelt far away. A spike in nutrients may point to upstream activity. Even the presence of microplastics tells a story, one of intrusion, of imbalance, of forgetting the river's ancient ways. Yet the river adapts, slowly, painfully, but it does. It reminds us that memory is not fixed. It bends, adjusts, reshapes itself, never losing the past entirely, but weaving it into something new. Some rivers dry up seasonally, vanishing into cracked earth, only to return months later. Yet even when absent, the river remembers. The channels remain, the seeds wait, the fish eggs lie dormant. Life holds its breath, listening for the first trickle. And when the rains return, the river reawakens, not as something reborn, but as something remembered. The floodplain blooms, the fish return, and the insects resume their chorus as if no time had passed at all. It is a sacred rhythm, the kind that only deep memory allows. Not all rivers look the same. Some flow with clarity, their stones visible beneath a glassy surface. Others move like ink, dark and slow, rich with nutrients and mystery. But each remembers in its own way. Fast rivers record erosion, transport, and urgency. Slow rivers remember depth, patience, and silence. Even braided rivers, with their shifting channels and unpredictable paths, embody a memory of chaos managed, of possibility embraced. No two are identical, yet all share this common thread, a living relationship with time. The Amazon's own tributaries form a lattice of remembering. Blackwater rivers, like the Rio Negro, carry tannins from decaying leaves, their tea-colored waters soft and acidic. Whitewater rivers like the Salimos rush with sediments from the Andes, pale and nutrient-rich. Each supports different ecologies, different sounds, different histories, and yet together they form one vast remembering body, stretching over thousands of miles, joining species, climates, and cultures through water that never ceases to flow. Even the river's scent carries memory. The earthy aroma after rain, the sweet scent of flowering banks, the sharp tang of disturbed mud all speak of conditions of what has come before. Animals sense this deeply. They know when to migrate, when to mate, when to forage, not because they remember in the way we do, but because their bodies respond to the remembered signals written into the river itself. Smell, vibration, chemical changes, these are the cues that tell a bird it's time to fly or a fish it's time to spawn. The river teaches without words, and its students are many. In the quietest moments, the river seems still, but even then it moves. Beneath the surface, currents swirl in hidden spirals. Grains of sand tumble slowly downstream. Temperature layers shift with the falling night. The surface may reflect the stars, but below is a universe in motion, remembering every interaction, every pressure, every change in flow. And when morning comes, the surface again sparkles with light, a new page added to the never-ending chronicle of flow. And then there are the voices, not spoken ones, but the layered calls of life along the water. Frogs echoing into dusk, insects weaving vibration into the air, birds announcing territory and longing. All of them respond to the river's presence, and all are remembered by it. Their calls shape the ecosystem, trigger behavior, and echo through the trees and currents alike. These sounds, like the river itself, form loops, memories etched in rhythm, heard and reheard through time. There is a profound peace in knowing the river does not need to be watched to continue. It flows whether we are present or not. It remembers even when no one listens. And in this, it offers us a kind of humility, the awareness that the world is full of intelligent systems, of memory and wisdom that exist entirely without us. To walk beside a river is to be invited into that story, not as author or observer, but as a brief participant, a shadow on the bank, a voice in the wind, a breath in the mist. And so we end where we began, by the water's edge, watching the river move. We have seen its memory written in curves and sediments, in the cycles of plants and animals, in the chemistry of the deep. We have listened to its silent song, felt its rhythm in our bones, and come to understand that memory does not always live in the mind. Sometimes it lives in motion, in continuity, in the way a river moves forever forward, yet carries everything with it. Every drop remembers. Every current speaks, and if we are still, truly still, we can hear it whisper. We can hear the river remember us. The forest breathes, not in the way we do, with lungs expanding and contracting, but in a rhythm more ancient, more patient, and more vast. With every sunrise, as golden light filters through the canopy, the leaves unfurl their silent lungs, opening tiny pores called stomata to draw in carbon dioxide. With each inhalation of this invisible gas, they transform it, weaving sunlight into sugars and releasing oxygen into the air. What seems like stillness is in truth a quiet respiration, a gentle exhalation of life that surrounds us on every side. The forest does not breathe once or twice, but endlessly, carrying the pulse of earth within its green body. In the Amazon rainforest, this breath is immense. Billions of leaves spread across millions of trees, open and close in unison, releasing streams of oxygen that rise into the atmosphere like invisible prayers. The very air we breathe, the oxygen that fills our lungs, is touched by this collective exhalation. Scientists estimate that the Amazon produces a significant portion of the world's oxygen, though much of it is consumed within the forest itself, feeding the respiration of plants, animals, fungi, and microbes. Still, the forest's breath reaches outward, shaping climates, influencing weather, and reminding us that our own lungs are not separate but participants in a global cycle of air. As the sun climbs higher, the forest's breathing deepens. Heat stirs the canopy, water evaporates from leaves in a process called transpiration, and clouds begin to form above the green expanse. This is more than evaporation. It is the forest's way of exhaling moisture into the sky, seeding clouds that will later return as rain. In this endless cycle, the Amazon creates much of its own weather, feeding itself with water carried on wind and sky. It is a remarkable choreography, trees drawing water from roots deep below, sending it upward through trunks and veins, and releasing it gently into the air to fall again as life-giving rain. The forest breathes not only oxygen but water, a double exhalation that sustains ecosystems both near and far. Step quietly into this breathing world and you feel it. The air is thick with humidity, carrying the scent of damp soil, green leaves, and flowers hidden in shadows. Each breath you take is infused with the work of countless leaves, each one engaged in photosynthesis, each one whispering oxygen into the atmosphere. And in return you exhale carbon dioxide, which the trees gladly accept, weaving it into sugars and fibers that will become wood, bark, and seed. It is an intimate exchange, a conversation between your lungs and the forests, unspoken yet profound. To walk here is to breathe together, to share a rhythm that transcends species and time. Deep within the canopy, where light filters in fractured beams, smaller plants participate in this breathing chorus. Ferns unfurl their delicate fronds, mosses glisten with beads of moisture, and orchids cling to branches, their roots suspended in air. Even these small beings contribute, exhaling oxygen and transpiring water, their collective presence amplifying the breath of the forest. It is not only the great trees that matter, but the countless smaller voices that join them, creating harmony in diversity, a choir of breath that never falters. Each plant, no matter how small, is a cell in this vast green lung. The animals, too, are part of this respiration. Insects buzz through shafts of sunlight, their wings shimmering like glass. Birds call across the canopy, their voices rising on the same air exhaled by leaves. Monkeys leap from branch to branch, their movements stirring the forest's breath, mixing oxygen and carbon dioxide in unseen spirals. Even the quiet creatures, frogs, sloths, jaguars, contribute, inhaling oxygen, exhaling carbon dioxide, completing the cycle with grace. Life and breath are inseparable here, woven together in an endless loop of exchange, a testament to the interconnectedness of all beings. Beneath the surface, the soil breathes as well. Microbes and fungi consume fallen leaves, decaying wood, and organic matter, releasing carbon dioxide back into the air. This underground respiration is as vital as the canopy above, balancing the forest cycles and feeding nutrients back into the soil. Roots breathe, too, exchanging gases with the earth, drawing oxygen from air pockets and exhaling carbon dioxide in return. The breath of the forest, then, is not limited to what we see above, but extends into the hidden realms below, where life thrives in shadows and silence. When night falls, the forest's breathing changes. Without sunlight, photosynthesis pauses and trees inhale oxygen just as we do, releasing carbon dioxide into the night air. But this does not diminish the forest's gift. It simply shifts rhythm, reminding us that breathing is not constant but cyclical, like the rise and fall of tides. Stars glimmer above the canopy, reflected in pools of water below, while the forest exhales warmth and scent into the cool air. Creatures of the night, owls, bats, moths stir, carrying the forest's breath deeper into its hidden corners. In darkness, the lungs of the forest rest and reset, preparing for the renewal of dawn. The breath of the forest extends beyond its borders. Moisture carried upward forms rivers of vapor that drift across continents, influencing weather systems thousands of miles away. Winds catch the forest exhalation, scattering it across oceans, mountains, and plains. Rain that falls in distant lands may have begun as vapor released by Amazonian leaves. Oxygen in our lungs may once have been whispered into existence by a single green cell deep in the canopy. This is the miracle of connection, that the forest's breath is not confined to one place, but circulates across the globe, binding us all in an unseen embrace. And so, as we stand within this cathedral of green, listening to the rustle of leaves and the quiet trickle of streams, we are reminded that breathing is not only an act of survival but of communion. Each inhale ties us to the forest, each exhale returns something it needs. The Amazon breathes, we breathe, the earth breathes, a continuous cycle that links us to one another and to every living thing. To forget this is to forget our place in the great chorus of life. To remember it is to breathe with reverence, with gratitude, with the soft awareness that each breath is shared. The breath of the forest is ancient, older than language, older than memory. Long before humans learned to measure air, long before cities or machines, the forest exhaled into the sky, sustaining worlds we will never know. It has witnessed extinctions and renewals, droughts and floods, warmth and cold, and still it breathes. And perhaps in its patience it teaches us something vital, that to live is to breathe not only for ourselves but for others. That every inhalation is a gift and every exhalation a return. In this rhythm, the forest whispers its deepest truth. We are part of its breath as it is part of ours. To understand the breath of the forest more deeply, we must look beyond the canopy and into the forest's subtle mechanisms. The quiet technologies of life that operate without wires or engines, yet with far greater efficiency. Each tree, like a living tower, draws moisture from the soil and sends it upwards through a process that defies gravity, a silent pull called transpiration. As water evaporates from the undersides of leaves, it creates a gentle vacuum that pulls more water upward, carrying with it minerals and memory. This unseen flow runs through xylem tubes, tiny vessels inside trunks and branches, and it is as consistent as the tide, yet more delicate. The forest breathes upward from roots to sky in slow, steady exhales of vapor. This moisture release is not just for the trees. It builds clouds. Above the Amazon, satellites can see the result of this breath, long ribbons of vapor that curl skyward, drift westward, and fall again as rain, often hundreds of kilometers away. In this way, the forest waters itself. It creates its own rain, not through magic, but through harmony, a self-sustaining cycle where breath becomes weather. Scientists call this a biotic pump, a term that feels clinical for something so wondrous. What it means is that the forest has agency, that its very act of living influences the sky. Its breath does not stop at the treetops, it reaches the heavens. Inside the forest, this cycle nourishes every level of life. Epiphytes, plants that live on other plants, absorb moisture from the air, thriving on fog and vapor without touching the ground. Mosses sponge up the dampness, turning trunks and stones into living tapestries. Even the air is thicker here, softer, wrapped in a kind of warmth that carries the scent of earth, leaves, and time. Inhaling this air is different from breathing elsewhere. It feels richer, almost textured, as though the molecules carry not only oxygen but story, the size of leaves, the scent of old rain, the chemistry of photosynthesis, all woven into a single breath. The role of forests in regulating temperature is another miracle of breath. Trees shade the ground, reducing heat. Their evaporation cools the air like a planetary air conditioner powered by sunlight. In regions where forests have been cleared, temperatures rise, winds shift, and rainfall becomes erratic. The breath of the forest, interrupted, alters entire ecosystems. It is a fragile balance and one that shows how much the world relies on this living exhalation. A forest does not simply exist, it participates. Its breath is a stabilizing force, a gentle hand on the climate's shoulder, guiding with invisible care. Within the lungs of the forest, carbon is constantly exchanged. Through photosynthesis, trees pull carbon dioxide from the air and store it as wood, bark, roots, and leaves. This carbon is locked away, sometimes for centuries. When forests grow, they remove carbon. When they burn or decay, they release it. The Amazon, vast as it is, acts as one of the world's greatest carbon sinks, breathing in more than it exhales, storing the excess in living tissue. But this balance is delicate. Deforestation turns breath into cough, turns exhalation into loss. Trees that once cooled the air and stored carbon now release it in plumes of smoke, their memories burned away, their breath silenced. Still, the forest persists. It has endured droughts, fires, ice ages, and storms. Its resilience is written in diversity. The Amazon contains thousands of species of trees, each with its own rhythm of breathing, its own strategy for surviving heat, flood, or shadow. Some leaves are broad and waxy, others narrow and feathery. Some trees grow fast and die young, others take centuries to reach their full height. Each strategy is a breath pattern, a way of participating in the great inhalation and exhalation of the biosphere. And just like different instruments in an orchestra, each tree's breath contributes to the symphony of the whole. Animals, too, adapt to the breath of the forest. Certain insects are active only at specific humidity levels, their wings responsive to the moisture in the air. Birds nest at elevations where oxygen is just right. Even the calls of frogs and monkeys are shaped by the density of the air, carrying farther or shorter depending on how full the forest's lungs are. Life here is tuned to breath, not just for survival, but for communication, for presence, for timing. It is a language written in vapor, pressure, and wind. When the rains come, and they always do, the forest drinks deeply. Leaves glisten, soil steams, rivers rise, but more than water falls from the sky. Pollen spores, fragments of old breath carried high into the clouds, return to the forest, nourishing it with the memory of its own exhalation. It is a full circle exchange. Breath becomes cloud, cloud becomes rain, rain becomes life. Nothing is wasted, nothing is forgotten. Even the air itself seems to hum with this rhythm, as if carrying the melody of the forest's breath back down through the trees. Underneath it all, the fun. Listen, invisible to most eyes, mycorrhizal networks, vast webs of fungal filaments, connect roots across the forest floor. They share nutrients, water, and chemical messages, enabling trees to speak to one another. When one tree is stressed, its fungal partners may send help from stronger neighbors. When a tree falls, the network redirects resources to where they are needed most. Some scientists call this the wood wide web, and it may be the truest metaphor we have, a network of breath, of awareness, stretching beneath the forest like a hidden lung, exhaling understanding across the soil. Even decay is part of the forest's breathing. A fallen log, rotting slowly, releases stored carbon, nutrients, and moisture back into the ecosystem. Mushrooms bloom from the damp bark, insects gather, and microbes flourish. This is not death but transformation, the forest taking in the breath it once gave, recycling it with reverence. Nothing is lost, everything returns. In this, the forest mirrors our own bodies. We exhale carbon that plants need. They exhale oxygen we crave. We breathe each other into being. At dusk, the air shifts. Temperatures drop, and the forest begins to inhale once more. The stomata on leaves close gradually, conserving water, reducing their exchange of gases. Night creatures begin to stir, and the breath of the forest slows but never ceases. Even in darkness, respiration continues, soft and steady. A sloth moves gently through the canopy. Bats flutter in the shadows. Moths emerge, their wings dusted with pollen. The air thickens slightly, scented with orchids, damp bark, and unseen flowers. You can almost hear the sigh, not of exhaustion, but of completion. Another day has passed in the lungs of the earth. The forest is not only alive, it is breathing in ways more profound than we can fully understand. Its inhalations shape the air, its exhalations shape the sky, and its silence teaches us how to listen more deeply. To breathe with the forest is to become part of something older than civilization, older than speech, a rhythm that predates us and will likely outlast us. The forest is not lungs beside us. It is our lungs, extended, multiplied, made green and vast and sacred. And so we must learn to breathe with care. To protect forests is not only to protect beauty or biodiversity, it is to protect our breath, our future, our place in the world's story. Every tree felled is a breath stolen. Every seed planted is a breath restored. The forest has taught us how to breathe. Now it asks only that we remember, that we listen, that we protect what gives us life, not with fear or guilt, but with awe, the kind that makes each breath slower, deeper, more grateful. For in the breath of the forest we find not only oxygen, but belonging, not only science, but wonder. And if we are very quiet, if we place a hand on a trunk and feel the slight damp of moss, if we close our eyes and breathe in sync with the leaves around us, we may feel it, the pulse of something greater, the breath that sustains all breath, the voice that speaks without words, the forest breathing still. There is a stillness to the early morning in the forest that feels almost sacred. Before the birds sing, before the insects rise, there is only breath, soft, silent, suspended in the mist that clings to every leaf, every vine, every branch. The forest breathes in anticipation, in memory, in presence. Dew collects on leaves like liquid stars, and as the first rays of light pass through the canopy, those drops evaporate, another exhalation, another step in the long, slow rhythm of life. If you stand quietly enough, you can feel it. The pulse of air moving through leaves, the warmth rising from the soil, the gentle sigh of trunks soaking in sunlight. In these hours, the trees begin their photosynthetic work. Light activates pigments, and the great engines of sugar and oxygen come to life. But even this moment, so filled with transformation, is peaceful. The trees do not rush. Their breath does not accelerate. It remains steady, paced, reliable, an anchor for everything that moves faster than it should. There is something reassuring in the fact that no matter how hurried the world becomes, the breath of the forest keeps to its own tempo, unbothered by urgency, grounded in patience. As the day unfolds, the forest's breath becomes more visible, not in smoke or mist, but in presence. Butterflies rise with the warmth, their wings fragile and iridescent. Bees hum near blossoms that have opened just in time. Every beat of a wing stirs the air. Every drop of nectar sipped is part of a greater dance. Insects pollinate flowers that will become fruits, which will feed birds whose droppings will plant seeds. These cycles, so intricate and continuous, depend on breath, on the oxygen created by leaves, on the moisture suspended in air, on the balance of gases that float silently around us all. Life here is not only supported by the forest's breath, it is woven from it. High above, the canopy glimmers. Sunlight filters through leaves that move in gentle waves, each one catching the light for a brief moment before passing it to another. The air is warm now, saturated with scent of bark, pollen, fruit, and fungi. It is a living perfume, not cloying but honest. It tells the truth about what is blooming, what is ripening, what is decaying. Breathing this air feels like reading a forest-wide journal written in invisible ink. If you know how to inhale slowly enough, you can interpret what it says. Beneath the trees, vines climb and twist, not randomly but toward light and moisture, guided by subtle cues in the air. Some open their stomata at night when the air is cooler, conserving water. Others breathe more boldly during the day, confident in their ability to draw from deep roots. The variety of breath here is astounding. Each plant, each leaf, each root tip has evolved a slightly different strategy, a slightly different way of participating in the forest's respiration. Like instruments in an orchestra, their diversity creates harmony, not sameness, but cooperation. This harmony is fragile. When forests are cleared, when breath is halted, the silence is loud. Without trees to exhale moisture, clouds form less frequently. Without canopies to shade the ground, soil dries and hardens. Without roots to hold the earth, floods run unchecked. The breath of the forest is not just vital, it is foundational. Where it stops, imbalance begins. But even in the wounded places, new breath tries to rise, grasses push through ash, pioneer trees stretch thin limbs toward the sun. The lungs of the world are resilient, not invincible, but determined. They remember how to breathe, even after long silence. And we are not separate from this breathing. The air that enters our lungs has passed through forests, oceans, grasslands, and mountains. It has flowed through animals and ancestors. It has carried the scent of rain and fire. It has cooled the feathers of birds and rushed through canyon walls. When we breathe, we are participating in an ancient inheritance. The molecules we inhale were exhaled by forests long before we were born, perhaps even by trees that no longer stand. We carry their memory inside us without ever knowing their names. Breathing with awareness, with reverence, changes how we see the world. Suddenly, a tree is not just shade. It is breath, it is song, it is memory. A fallen leaf is not debris. It is a vessel that once inhaled sky and exhaled life. The wind is no longer empty. It is full of shared breath, passing from being to being, never wasted, never still. When we begin to sense this, the forest no longer feels like a distant green backdrop. It becomes family. It becomes part of our body. And perhaps in moments of true silence, when even our thoughts pause, we can feel the forest breathing with us. one breath then another, a deep stillness then movement, the exhale of 1,000 trees, the inhale of 1,000 lungs, not perfectly synced, not choreographed, but in conversation. A dialogue without words, a trust without sound. The forest asks nothing in return, only that we remember, that we notice, that we protect the breath that protects us. As the sun begins to fall once more, shadows stretch across the forest floor. The leaves turn softly like pages in a slow book. Light grows golden and the air cools with a sigh. This is not an ending, but a transition from one kind of breath to another. Diurnal creatures settle, nocturnal ones stir. Oxygen continues to move, water continues to rise, gases shift gently in balance. Nothing stops, everything flows, and through it all the forest breathes slowly, deeply, unceasingly. We often speak of the forest as the lungs of the earth, but perhaps that is not quite right. Lungs are internal, hidden, dependent. The forest is visible, external, generous. It gives breath freely, without hesitation, without asking who receives it. Its breath is not limited by walls or borders. It crosses oceans. It softens deserts. It cools cities. It carries the heartbeat of the earth on currents of wind and waves. In the end, we return to the beginning, to that quiet moment in the mist when the forest took its first breath of the day. We remember how it began gently, almost imperceptibly, and rose into fullness. How it held the world in its vapor, in its chemistry, in its silence. How it moved through us even as we passed through it. The breath of the forest is not just an environmental process. It is a living rhythm, a reminder, a sacred continuity. To live with awareness of this breath is to live with wonder. To honor it is to honor life itself. And to protect it, not out of guilt or duty, but out of awe, is the most human thing we can do. For in protecting the breath of the forest, we are protecting our own. And long after we are gone, the forest will continue to breathe, and the air will remember us. High above the forest floor, where the sunlight touches first and the wind moves without resistance, a hidden world begins its day. This is the canopy, a vast suspended ocean of green, where the tops of trees weave together to form a living ceiling over the world below. It is not flat or uniform, but undulating and intricate, a layered cathedral of leaves, branches, flowers, and life. And here in this elevated expanse, a symphony plays not with instruments or melody, but with motion, breath, and light. It is a performance older than memory, renewed with every dawn, known only to those who rise with the mist. The canopy is not a single thing, but a world of many, a place of niches and layers, of networks and silences. Leaves of every shape and size catch the morning sun, trembling slightly in the wind, warming themselves for the work ahead. Some are glossy and broad, like mirrors for the light. Others are narrow and tough, sculpted by years of wind and rain. Each leaf joins the symphony in its own way, photosynthesizing, exchanging gases, adjusting its angle to the shifting sun. Their rustling is not noise, but whisper, a breathy chorus that swells and softens, steady as a heartbeat. Among the branches, creatures begin to stir. Howler monkeys lift their voices to the sky, their deep, echoing calls rolling over the treetops like slow drums. Birds join them, hundreds of species chirping, singing, warbling, each note tuned to a different frequency, each call made to travel across air dense with moisture and leaves. This is the woodwind section of the canopy, voices lifted in introduction, announcing presence, territory, longing, and joy. In their songs, the forest speaks not in sentences, but in pulses of meaning, layered in harmony and space. Insects provide the percussion, the rhythmic thrum of cicadas, the syncopated tapping of beetles against bark, the soft hum of bees seeking the first open flowers. These sounds are subtle but constant, filling every gap in the silence. Together with birds and monkeys, they form the beginning of the day's great performance. Every note is functional, yet beautiful. Every rhythm is part of something larger than itself. It is not music made for an audience. It is music made because life insists on singing. Light plays the role of conductor. As the sun rises higher, beams slip between branches, spotlighting leaves and vines, triggering movement. Vines stretch toward brightness, flowers begin to bloom, and small lizards dart across warming bark. Everything responds to the conductor's silent guidance, growing, blooming, hunting, hiding. Even the shadows change their shape and tone, softening, shifting, painting the canopy floor with dapples of light that pulse like a gentle metronome. The architecture of the canopy is astonishing. Trees interlock their branches, not in competition but in balance. Some stretch tall and straight, bearing massive leaves, others spread wide, forming bridges between trunks. Lianas twist upward from below, coiling like curious fingers. Bromeliads and orchids root themselves in crooks and hollows, drinking from pools that form after rain. These epiphytes, plants that live on plants, add depth to the soundscape and texture to the scene. They gather their own communities, frogs that croak from tiny puddles, insects that hatch in rain-filled leaves, and birds that nest in flowered baskets suspended far from the ground. Pollinators move through this space with purpose and grace. Hummingbirds dart like living arrows, their wings blurring into invisible arcs, their bodies painted in flashes of emerald and ruby. Butterflies drift on lazy spirals of air, their colors catching sunlight like shards of stained glass. Bees buzz deliberately from bloom to bloom, brushing against stamens, shaking loose pollen that floats in golden clouds. This movement is not chaos. It is choreography, a dance of dust and nectar, of timing and return. Every moment in the canopy is shaped by relationship. A tree flowers and somewhere a bat begins its nightly route. A fruit ripens and monkeys return, remembering the path by scent and sound. A breeze shifts and with it the calls of birds adjust to carry further clearer. The canopy is a network not of wires, but of instinct, evolution, memory, and trust. Every species contributes to its tone, its tempo, its texture. But the symphony is not only sound and sight, it is breath. The trees exhale oxygen, the leaves transpire water vapor, and together they shape the very air. The humidity of the canopy is thick with breath, and it carries scent like a song. The sweetness of sap, the spice of bark, the perfume of petals all mingle in the warm air, creating a sensory harmony that is invisible yet powerful. It tells the insects where to go, it signals ripeness to mammals, it communicates danger, desire, and change. Even decay has its place in this music. A fallen branch becomes home to mosses and mushrooms. Termites find their rhythm inside the bark. Ants form lines like quiet strings of percussion, moving in patterns that follow trails of chemical scent. Decomposition is not silence. It is a slower movement in the symphony, a minor key that deepens the forest's complexity. Nothing is wasted. Every note echoes in another, even if played at a different pace. Wind brings its own instrument. A breeze makes the leaves rustle gently like brushes on a drum. A stronger gust causes whole branches to sway, creaking softly, responding like strings drawn across time. When storms come, the tempo increases. Rain falls in heavy, rhythmic pulses. Thunder rolls above the canopy like a distant bass drum. Lightning flashes, illuminating green architecture in staccato bursts. The forest does not fear this crescendo. It embraces it, absorbs it, and afterward returns to stillness with deeper resonance. The canopy is not only sound and structure, but a highway of travel. For animals that never touch the ground, it is everything: shelter, food, pathway, and protection. Squirrels leap between branches with unerring precision. Sloths cling upside down, moving in near silence like slow-moving shadows. Tree frogs tuck themselves beneath leaves, their tiny bodies still but alert. These creatures are the dancers of the canopy, moving through space in harmony with the unseen beat of the forest's breath. When the sun begins to dip, the music changes. Diurnal birds offer final songs. Monkeys settle, their chatter replaced by the clicks and whirs of nocturnal insects. Bats begin to stir. The light grows amber, then dusky blue. The canopy does not grow quiet, it shifts key, changes instrumentation, enters a slower movement. Fireflies begin their silent ballet. Moths replace butterflies. The wind softens. The breath of the forest cools, drawing in mist from below. And still, the symphony continues. It does not require an audience. It has played since the first leaves reached for light, since the first wings took flight in dawn air. It is the living sound of equilibrium, the balance between energy and rest, between predator and prey, between sunlight and shadow. The canopy is not just the top layer of trees. It is a world above the world, a dimension of life that sings quietly but endlessly. To listen to the symphony of the canopy is to remember that life does not happen only on the ground. It happens in layers, in heights, in patterns we do not always see. It invites us to slow down, to lift our gaze, and to remember that above us there is always something growing, something calling, something breathing. The canopy does not shout, it whispers, and in its whisper is the song of life, ancient and always beginning. To step deeper into the canopy is to enter a realm where vertical space becomes as vital as horizontal ground. Here, every meter of height holds a different microclimate, a slightly altered breath, a unique angle of light. The topmost branches feel the full force of sun and wind, while just below a filtered golden haze cradles bromeliads and air roots in softened light. Further still, shadows become thicker, moisture gathers more heavily, and the scent of moss deepens. This layered world is not just structure, it is music arranged in vertical lines, each level with its own voice, its own tempo, its own mood. Light is perhaps the most refined composer in this green symphony. As it shifts through the day, the intensity and angle of illumination change every element of life within the canopy. Some leaves respond by altering their angle, a slow dance toward the sun. Others, adapted to shadow, wait patiently for their hour early morning, late afternoon, when the light bends just enough to touch them. Even flowers time their bloom to moments of perfect illumination. Petals unfold with grace, sometimes for only a few hours, sometimes for days, but always they listen to the light. Color in the canopy is not random, but expressive. Vivid reds signal ripeness to birds, deep purples warn insects to stay away. Bright yellow patches flutter as butterflies mate, defend, or disguise. Even bark and lichen participate, pale tones reflect heat, dark hues retain warmth. The entire palette is purposeful. It communicates survival strategies honed over millennia, visual notes that play across the leaves and trunks in subtle harmony. To the untrained eye, it may seem chaotic. But to those who live within it, every hue is a message, every shift in shade a cue. At midday, the rhythm slows, heat swells, and many animals retreat to shadowed perches. The cicadas, however, crescendo. Their calls, electric and sharp, pierce the heavy air in waves. Some species pulse in chorus, a synchronized rise and fall of sound that blankets entire valleys. Others sing solo, their droning song steady and persistent, filling the space like the hum of an ancient machine. The trees themselves seem still, but inside they are busy. Sporting water, repairing cells, expanding slowly toward the sun. The silence is an illusion. The music never stops. Above all this, raptors glide. Harpy eagles, black vultures, and hawks ride thermal currents invisible to the eye but mapped in the instincts of wings. Their presence adds a new register to the canopy's song, one of watchfulness, of patience, of precision. When a shadow passes quickly over the leaves, the smaller creatures fall silent. In those brief, tense moments, the entire symphony holds its breath. Then when the danger fades, the chorus resumes, perhaps changed, perhaps softer, but always resuming. The movement within the canopy is constant. Leaves twist slightly to reduce evaporation. Flowers tilt after being pollinated. Vines creep millimeter by millimeter along their hosts. Insects land, feed, leave. Birds flutter, pause, leap. Everything is in motion, but none of it is rushed. The tempo is slow enough to miss if you do not return. But if you come back day after day, hour after hour, you begin to see the motion for what it is: deliberate, meaningful, elegant. Humidity is its own player in this ensemble. It thickens the air, makes scent more potent, slows the dissipation of chemicals. A monkey's musk lingers on the bark it touches. The perfume of flowers travels far, guiding bats and beetles. The dampness softens fallen petals, welcomes moss and lichen to take root. And all the while, water condenses on leaf tips and falls in rhythmic drips, a steady percussion from above. In the stillness of the hottest hours, these drips become a kind of lullaby. Below the larger branches, suspended in air and light, hang epiphytes that act like miniature ecosystems. Some bromeliads hold entire pools of rainwater in their rosettes, cradling insect larvae, tiny frogs, and microbial life. These pockets of still water are mirrors of the canopy's sky, reflections in miniature of the vast system they reside within. Inside them, life begins and ends without ever touching the ground. In the canopy, life does not trickle down, it thrives where it hangs, balanced delicately between gravity and growth. The roots of canopy trees are nowhere to be seen, but their influence is felt everywhere. Nutrients drawn from the soil are carried upward with care, spread to the highest leaf tip. And when those leaves fall, as they eventually do, they return those nutrients to the earth, a soft recycling of breath and matter. The cycle continues, soil to root, root to crown, crown to air, and then back again. The forest is a loop, not a line, and the canopy is both the top of this cycle and its heart. Communication flows through this space in every form: sound, scent, light, even vibration. Some vines respond to touch, curling toward hosts. Some insects detect changes in electrical fields around flowers. Trees under attack may release chemical signals into the air, a warning that travels with the wind to others nearby. And in the quietest hours, when the sun is low and the wind still, you can almost imagine that the entire canopy is humming, not in sound, but in presence, in pulse, in knowing. Even play has its place in the canopy's music. Young monkeys chase one another along vines, leaping and tumbling in acrobatic games that build muscle, trust, and bonds. Parrots toss seeds into the air and catch them as if practicing coordination. Play is not wasted energy. It is rehearsal. It is learning. It is improvisation within the symphony, joyful, spontaneous, but never without meaning. As the afternoon deepens, colors shift again. Shadows stretch across branches, and golden light paints the leaves. Some flowers close slowly, folding inward like sleeping faces. Others bloom only now, awaiting the pollinators of dusk, bats, moths, and night beetles drawn by fragrance instead of color. The symphony changes key once more. The tempo slows, the melodies lengthen, and a new cast of players enters the stage. Rain often arrives in the late day, not as interruption but as overture. Thunder rolls softly at first, a drumbeat beneath the leafy roof. Then suddenly drops fall in sheets, tapping every surface, plucking every leaf like a harp string. The entire canopy becomes a percussive masterpiece, every tree adding its voice, every leaf a note struck by water. Frogs begin to call, birds flutter to hidden cover, but no one panics. The rain is part of the rhythm. It refreshes, nourishes, and renews. And as it ends, steam rises, mist forms, the canopy exhales, and for a moment all sound fades but the soft drip of raindrops from leaf to leaf. The forest breathes again. The symphony rests between movements. This is the life of the canopy, a layered harmony of light, color, sound, scent, and breath. It is not just a habitat. It is a language. It is not just a place above the ground. It is a world unto itself. Those who dwell here do not merely live, they contribute, compose, perform. And those who listen truly Lee. Sten will hear a song unlike any other, a song that has been playing long before we arrived and will continue long after we are gone. At night, the canopy transforms. What was bright and layered with sunlight becomes a realm of shadow and subtle movement. The air cools slowly, and with it the pace of life shifts. Nocturnal creatures emerge with confidence. Their eyes shine in the dim glow of moonlight filtered through branches. Their wings, feet, and calls alter the symphony of the forest into something deeper, more mysterious, a slower melody that trades the chirps and chatter of day for clicks, whispers, and silence laced with sound. The canopy doesn't sleep, it simply changes instruments. Owls take their place now, gliding silently between branches with wings designed not to disturb the air. Each movement is a breath of darkness, each call a bell ringing through the hush. Tree frogs begin their song, rhythmic, urgent, repetitive. Some species croak in pulses like a metronome, while others call in long, melodic tones that rise and fall with the humidity. Moths flutter, their paper-thin wings almost invisible, drawn toward the faintest scent of nectar. Even bats, flitting rapidly between flower and fruit, add to the invisible choreography with sonar pulses, sound not meant for ears, but for feeling space. Below this canopy of motion, life listens. A sleeping sloth curls tighter on its branch, rocking gently in the breeze. Juvenile monkeys press close to their mothers, breathing in sync with the rise and fall of leaves overhead. The wind carries coolness now, and with it scent changes, sharper, heavier with moisture and the perfume of night-blooming flowers. Moonlight slips between gaps in the branches like a thin ribbon of silk, tracing soft outlines across petals, fur, and feather. The forest becomes a painting, deep greens turn to silver, gold replaced by blue. Even in darkness, the forest continues its work. Leaves, still photosensitive, shift slightly, conserving energy. Some flowers close, their fragrance disappearing until dawn. Others open now, timing their bloom to the bats and moths that depend on them. These connections, delicate and precise, are not chance. They are the result of evolution shaped by trust, by proximity, by time. A single blossom may wait an entire year to bloom for one night, for one bat. And if the bat arrives late, the flower will wither untouched. But most of the time it works. The rhythm is upheld, the trust is honored. High in the canopy, the temperature drops and the water vapor exhaled by trees condenses once more, forming mist that settles like a veil. This mist doesn't silence the forest, it softens it. Sounds travel shorter distances now. Footsteps of tiny mammals grow dampened. Wings slice through air more quietly. The entire ecosystem enters a nocturne, a slowed cadence of action and stillness, of breath and listening. The symphony plays on, but now it is a lullaby, a composition of hushes and pulses, a soundscape woven for rest and renewal. The creatures of the night are careful listeners. A subtle creak might mean a predator is near. A sudden silence could signal danger, but even in this wariness there is elegance. No movement is wasted, energy is precious. The forest at night feels older somehow, not in years, but in wisdom. As if every leaf remembers storms, every root recalls drought, and every wingbeat knows the shape of the wind. Occasionally, lightning flashes far in the distance, lighting up the canopy for a heartbeat. In that moment, the entire architecture is revealed, every vine, every leaf, every perch. And just as quickly, darkness returns, and with it, the slow, resuming motion. These flashes are like memory, bright, sudden, revealing, then gone, leaving behind only the echo of their light. Somewhere a fruit drops from a tree and lands with a muffled thud far below. That single sound sets off a chain reaction. A tapir lifts its head, a night bird calls once, insects pause, then a few seconds later the normal rhythm resumes. The canopy accepts every sound, every interruption, every new layer as part of its composition. There are no mistakes in this music, only improvisation. As dawn approaches, the notes begin to shift again. The deep calls of nocturnal frogs grow shorter. The insects begin their fade. The first diurnal birds clear their throats with short, uncertain chirps. Slowly, very slowly, the symphony climbs in energy. It is the overture of morning, a warm-up of voices and rhythms preparing to begin again. Mist lifts, light edges in from the east, leaves tilt toward anticipated warmth, and with it, the cycle resets. The brilliance of the canopy is not just its complexity, but its continuity. Every moment is informed by the one before it. Every silence makes the next note sweeter. Every act of growth is balanced by decay. In this suspended world, nothing is truly still, but nothing hurries either. This is time without clocks. This is music without end. In the heart of this green ceiling, intelligence flourishes, not in brains or voices, but in coordination, adaptation, and memory. Vines remember where they last found light. Monkeys remember which branches can bear their weight. Parrots remember the season of each fruit. And trees, with their rings and rhythms, remember storms, droughts, and floods not as thoughts but as structure. Every scar in the bark is a song lyric. Every curl in a leaf is a harmony sustained. To study the canopy is to study a slow-motion orchestra, one that never plays the same melody twice but never abandons its theme. Scientists dangle from ropes, recording data in notebooks. Artists sketch the branching silhouettes against golden skies. Indigenous guides speak of paths through air, of birds that whisper omens. No single perspective sees it all. The canopy must be felt, breathed, entered to be understood. And though humans rarely dwell in this upper world, we are still part of it. Our breath exchanges with its leaves. Our warmth rises to meet its coolness. Our stories echo in its songs. The instruments may not have strings or keys, but their music fills our lungs every moment of our lives. So the next time you walk beneath trees, tilt your head upward. Listen. Let your eyes follow the lines of limbs as they reach toward light. Let your breath slow to match the rhythm above. Somewhere in that stillness, you may feel it, the living music of the canopy carrying on softly just above your head. And as you exhale, know that the trees above are inhaling, that you are part of the symphony, that your presence, your breath, your stillness is a note in their song, not separate, not observing, but belongings. Beneath the forest's floor, beyond the roots and rocks and scattered leaves, lies a world as rich, alive, and complex as any found above the canopy. It is easy to overlook this soil, this dark and damp layer that clings to boots and hides beneath carpets of moss. But within its depths are the threads of time, thin, tangled, and ancient, carrying stories that stretch back millions of years. Every grain of earth holds a fragment of memory. Every layer tells of rains that fell long ago, of leaves that drifted downward and never returned, of creatures that lived, died, and quietly became part of the ground itself. The soil is not a grave. It is a memory bank, a library, a pulse. Step softly and you'll begin to feel it, the gentle give beneath your feet, the scent rich, earthy, layered with old rain and living decay. The tiny movements not visible at first but constant as worms, beetles, fungi, and roots carry out their endless labors. This is not dirt. Dirt is dead. Soil is alive. It breathes, it metabolizes, it responds. It is the skin of the earth, always in contact with everything: roots, water, air, and time. And like skin, it tells a story of where it's been, what it's endured, and what it holds within. The top layer of soil, the humus, is a miracle of transformation. Fallen leaves, dead insects, animal droppings, pollen, broken branches all collapse into one another here. What was once distinct becomes shared. Decomposition is not an ending but a reconfiguration. Fungi break down lignin and cellulose. Bacteria digest proteins. Microbes trade sugars for minerals. The process is slow but never stops. Within a handful of soil live more organisms than there are stars in the galaxy. Millions of bacteria, thousands of fungal threads, microscopic creatures wriggling unseen. Each plays its role, each feeds and is fed, and together they weave time into texture. Roots thread downward through this dense complexity, seeking water, nutrients, and anchorage. Some roots are thick and strong, pushing stone aside. Others are fine and hair-like, invisible to the eye but vital for absorbing life from the dark. As they grow, roots leave behind chemical trails, signals of presence, distress, or cooperation. Some release exudates, compounds that feed friendly microbes or repel invaders. Others reach out to fungi, forming mycorrhizal partnerships where sugars are traded for minerals, and stability is exchanged for reach. These root fungi alliances form a vast, hidden web that connects trees across the forest. A communication network that shares resources, warns of pests, and balances growth. Scientists once believed trees were solitary. Now they know better. In the soil, trees talk, not with sound but with chemicals, with slow signals carried through fungal filaments. An injured tree may send distress compounds into the earth, prompting neighbors to increase their defenses. A parent tree may feed its own saplings through underground roots, even sacrificing itself to give them a better chance. In the soil, generosity is strategy, survival is shared. And time is not counted in days, but in seasons, in growth rings, in the slow descent of carbon into silence. The soil. It remembers the weather. Dry seasons leave layers of pale, compacted earth. Wet years bring darker, richer humus. Fires leave charcoal, carbonized memory that can linger for centuries. In floodplains, fine silt settles in soft waves, each one a story of a river's breath. In forest, older layers tell of species that once thrived, now gone, their pollen trapped in sediment, their roots fossilized into patterns that remain. And still, the soil renews itself. It listens, absorbs, and rearranges. What seems still is always changing. Seeds fall and wait. Some germinate within days, others lie dormant for years, even decades. Their shells resist water, decay, even light, until the right signal arrives at temperature, pressure, moisture. Then quietly they split. A rootlet threads downward, a shoot reaches up. In that moment the soil releases its welcome, minerals, microbes, warmth. The seed joins the chorus. Growth begins, but the soil does not rush. It has learned patience through erosion, glacier, drought, and fire. It knows that all things come in their time. Worms move through this realm with slow purpose. Their tunnels aerate the soil, allowing oxygen to reach roots, water to seep deeper. As they consume organic matter, they digest and redistribute nutrients, creating channels of fertility. Earthworms are composers of structure. Their movements write shape into the dark. In their passing, they make life possible for thousands of others: bacteria, mites, fungi, seedlings. And when they die, they too become part of the song. Fungi form the deeper harmonies. Some spread for kilometers, invisible above but expansive below. They send out hyphae, thread-like structures that pierce soil, wood, and root. They dissolve rock, digest leaf, deliver phosphorus and zinc and nitrogen. Without fungi, plants would starve. Without plants, fungi would fade. Together, they write resilience into the earth. And when conditions change, when a tree falls, when fire clears a patch, fungi are often the first to return. Not because they dominate, but because they remember how to begin. Animals also contribute to the composition. Rodents bury seeds that may never be retrieved. Insects churn the soil with every burrow. Decomposers reduce the fallen to fragments, ensuring nothing is lost. Even the footprints of large mammals press new shapes into the land, mixing layers, allowing air to enter. In the soil, everything participates, nothing is isolated, and all of it leaves trace, impressions that last longer than the creatures that made them. The color of the soil tells stories too. Rich black humus speaks of organic abundance. Red or yellow hues signal the presence of iron, shaped by oxygen and water. Pale sands tell of erosion, of leaching, of loss. Dark streaks may hint at volcanic ash, fallen long ago and folded into the life of the forest. Even the smell of soil shifts with memory, sweet and sharp after rain, metallic after lightning, sour where roots rot. The senses are tools for reading the text of the ground. Somewhere beneath our feet lies the past, untouched, unread, waiting. Layers of soil built up by seasons, by storms, by centuries. Dig deep enough and you find forgotten climates, vanished forests, bones of ancient animals. Soil does not erase, it softens, it blends, it covers, but it keeps. A seed from 1,000 years ago may rest just inches beneath your boot. A buried root from a forgotten tree may still pulse with mycorrhizal memory. In this way, the soil is not just time, it is continuity. And just as soil holds the past, it also prepares the future. What decays today becomes the nourishment for tomorrow. What breaks down is rebuilt. The nutrients in one fallen leaf may rise again in a flower years from now. The carbon released by one dying root may be captured by another. The cycles continue, looping, braiding, balancing. Soil is not the end of the story. It is the middle, the quiet middle where everything connects. To sit on the ground in a forest is to rest upon centuries of story. To place your palm against the earth is to touch layers of breath, of loss, of life. The stillness beneath is not silence, it is the slow, grounded hum of an ecosystem thinking, healing, remembering. And in that contact, in that stillness, you might feel it. The threads of time, wrapped in dark velvet, moving just beneath the surface, ready to rise again when the moment calls. This is the wisdom of the soil, patient, unseen, essential. It does not demand attention, it offers, it accepts, and always it continues. The forest floor is not a boundary, it is a beginning. With every fallen leaf and faded petal, the canopy above sends messages downward, and the soil listens with infinite patience. This slow dialogue between what falls and what waits begins the process of renewal. When a tree sheds its leaves, it is not discarding but contributing. Each leaf carries within it sugars, carbon, and minerals, small offerings. To the unseen world below, as they land, they begin to curl, to wrinkle, to soften. Fungi are often the first to arrive, sending out spores that bloom into invisible networks. Bacteria follow, sensing the change in chemistry. The leaf begins to dissolve, not vanish, but transform. This decomposition is the forest's memory work. What was once skybound is now grounded, broken into parts that other beings can use. And as these pieces fall further into the soil's layers, they lose their identity but gain purpose. Carbon atoms from an old fern may one day fuel the growth of a mushroom. Calcium from a bird's dropped feather might settle into a new root. Nothing in the soil is ever truly lost. It is simply rewritten into new sentences, rearranged like poetry across time. The network of life within soil is not random, but relational. Every microbe has a niche, every worm a role. Even the tiniest nematodes, thread-like creatures invisible to the naked eye, help regulate bacterial populations, ensuring balance. There is no hierarchy here, only reciprocity. Microbes release nutrients, roots absorb them. Fungi extend the reach of trees. Trees feed the fungi with sugars made from sunlight. This cooperation is older than mammals, older than birds, a system so finely tuned that even the smallest disruption sends ripples through the underground web. In some places, scientists have found ancient root systems fossilized in clay. These ghostly impressions speak of forests that stood when continents were connected, when the air was thicker, when the first insects buzzed in silence. The soil kept their memory, preserved not in amber or stone, but in chemistry and composition. And alongside them, pollen grains, perfectly preserved, tiny time travelers that tell of long-lost blooms, each particle a story, waiting to be read with microscopes and care. The soil is, in this way, a gentle historian. Modern forests still rely on this archive. Young trees grow faster when their roots share soil with older stumps, even those long dead. Nutrients are still being passed through underground threads. Perhaps somewhere beneath a living sapling lies the memory of its grandmother tree, roots once strong, now decaying, but still giving. This inheritance is not genetic, but ecological, a slow, steady bequeathing of strength and structure. Beneath groves of old trees, researchers have uncovered what they call mother trees, ancient giants whose roots connect to hundreds of younger plants through fungal threads. These matriarchs regulate the flow of information and resources, distributing carbon to those in need, even across species. When the forest is stressed by drought, insect invasion, or fire, the mother trees respond first, buffering the damage for those nearby. It is care without consciousness, wisdom without words. And when these old trees die, their passing marks more than a loss of height. It severs threads that took centuries to grow. The soil grieves in its own way. After a tree falls, the ground remains disturbed for years. Microbial communities shift. Light now reaches earth that has not seen it in decades. New seedlings arrive, old fungi fade, but the soil, patient as ever, adapts. It records the fall, it absorbs the shock, and then slowly it invites renewal. Moss grows, insects return, a new root begins to test the dark. The threads of time are never broken, only reknotted. Rain plays a vital role in this renewal. As droplets fall, they strike leaves, branches, and eventually the ground. Some are caught by mosses or funneled by leaves into the bases of trees. Others sink directly into the soil, carrying dissolved nutrients downward. The rain does not wash the forest clean. It weaves the surface into the underground, blending what is above with what lies below. And as it percolates, it reshapes the soil's layers, carrying carbon, loosening clay, feeding microbes. In dry times, the absence of rain changes the tempo, but never silences the system. The threads stretch, but they do not snap. Air moves through soil as well. Though it seems solid, the ground is full of spaces, tiny pores where gases exchange. Oxygen seeps in, allowing roots to breathe. Carbon dioxide escapes upward, a subtle exhalation. This gaseous exchange is delicate. Compact the soil too tightly through heavy machines or endless footsteps and the breath is stifled. Life suffocates. But left undisturbed, the soil continues to whisper, in warmth, in scent, in the subtle coolness just beneath the surface. It exhales the past, it inhales the present. And through all of this, time flows differently. Above ground, life moves fast. Leaves fall, animals pass, flowers bloom and fade, but beneath the rhythm is slow. A single root may grow for decades. A fungal network may take centuries to reach maturity. Carbon may lie stored in the soil for 1,000 years before returning to the sky. Time down here does not tick, it drifts, it pools. It settles, it teaches patience. There are places in the forest where the soil is deep, meters thick, layered with memory. In these places, scientists can dig and read the past like pages of a book. A sudden dark band may reveal a wildfire from centuries ago. A thin gray line may be ash from a distant volcano. A change in color, texture, or composition tells of floods, droughts, glaciation, and rebirth. These are not just data points, they are stories. They are how the earth remembers itself. And in some regions, human history is layered here too. charcoal from ancient cooking fires, bits of pottery, seeds from cultivated plants. The soil has absorbed our presence, and in some places it has grown stronger for it. In the Amazon, for example, dark earth known as terra preta holds nutrients created by people thousands of years ago. These human-touched soils still feed plants today, rich, stable, and alive. Proof that our interaction with the earth can be additive, not just extractive, that we too can belong to the soil's song. To lie down in the forest, cheek pressed to the ground, is to come close to this legacy. You hear nothing, and yet everything is speaking. The air is cooler near the soil, the scent more complex. A beetle moves beneath you. A root twists silently through clay. Fungi thread deeper, microbes divide. This is a place of motion, of exchange, of legacy. And as you breathe, you take part. The carbon you exhale may one day feed a fern. The skin you shed may one day nourish a root. This is what the soil teaches best. We are temporary but not meaningless. We are passing but not lost. Our presence, if offered gently, becomes part of something more. The threads of time in the soil do not exclude us. They invite us. They welcome us not as masters or makers, but as participants in the long, quiet memory of life. Here below the surface, there is no ego, no urgency, only exchange, only return. Only breaths. When morning light returns to the forest, the soil is already awake. Beneath the surface, life has not paused. It has simply continued, unseen, unfelt, but always unfolding. The warmth of dawn stirs the tiniest roots, and threads of mycelium respond to subtle temperature shifts. It is not that the soil anticipates the sun, it simply recognizes its rhythms. It listens to light in its own way, through warmth, through vibration, through the scent of water drawn back upward. This morning, a new seed begins to stir. It does not rush, it listens first. It waits for the soil's signals, moisture, nutrients, pressure before beginning its ascent. The shell softens. A pale root tests the dark, curling downward. A shoot rises. It is still blind, still fragile, but it is determined. It does not know what the sky is. It only knows which way is down, and from that it decides where to grow. This quiet decision marks the start of a life, one that will rise through layers of memory, one that will someday give back to the earth it emerges from. As it grows, it meets others. Fungal filaments reach out to it, offering nutrients in exchange for sugars. Tiny beetles crawl by. A passing worm brushes past. Every touch, every signal teaches the root where it is, not just in space, but in community. Roots are not alone. They tangle and thread, avoid and embrace. Some compete, some collaborate, but they all shape each other. The pattern they form is not visible from above, but below it is a map of intention, memory, and survival. Older roots remain too. From stumps long gone, woody tendrils still anchor deep in the clay. They no longer absorb, but they still hold. They form passageways for water. They cradle spores. They are skeletons of a past forest, now filled with new life. This layering of old and new is not decay, it is structure. It is the soil's way of remembering and supporting. A new root growing near an old one might grow straighter, stronger, protected from shifting earth. This is how memory becomes architecture. Even when disturbance comes, a fallen tree, a heavy flood, a wildfire, the soil does not panic. It registers change, it reorganizes. Microbial populations shift to adapt. Some vanish, others rise, new spores awaken, new chemistry unfolds. In the aftermath of fire, for example, special fungi bloom black, strange, adapted to ash. They consume charcoal and release nutrients. They prepare the soil for what comes next. They are not rebuilding what was, they are creating what will be. And so the forest begins again. Slowly, gently, a seed lands. A root tests the soil. A new story threads through time. To those who study this, the soil is not just a resource. It is a living system full of meaning. Ecologists read the chemistry. Mycologists trace the fungal webs. Indigenous peoples speak of the soil as a relative, not a thing, but a being. Their languages contain words for the soil's mood, its memory, its hunger. And scientists are beginning to catch up. They now know tha. Healthy soil breathes, that it filters water, stores carbon, supports immune systems, and even affects weather. It is the skin of the earth, and within it lives a beating heart of life unseen. This is not just true for forests. It is true in deserts, where soil crusts shelter cyanobacteria that fix nitrogen. It is true in tundra, where frozen layers hold greenhouse gases and ancient seeds. It is true beneath prairies, where roots stretch meters deep, binding earth and feeding grazers. And it is true in the soil beneath our feet, in cities, in gardens, in quiet roadside ditches. Wherever there is soil, there is story. And we too leave our imprint, not always gently. Agriculture that tills too deep can break the fungal threads. Chemicals can silence the microbial songs. Compaction can suffocate, but restoration is possible. When land is allowed to rest, when cover returns, when chemicals are removed and relationships restored, the soil remembers how to heal. It rewrites its threads. It sings again. There are places in the world where people are learning from this. Farmers planting cover crops not to harvest, but to nourish the earth. Foresters leaving fallen logs to feed the next generation. Communities composting waste to return nutrients to the ground. It is not about control, it is about listening, learning, returning. And perhaps most deeply it is about belonging, because the soil does not exclude us. It has always held us. Our bones, our footprints, our breath, all return to it. And in that return we are not lost. We become part of the next cycle. A child's laughter above might one day echo in the soil's silence below, not in sound, but in roots nourished, in air cleansed, in life supported. We may live above ground, but we depend on what lies below. For food, for water, for air, for memory, and for hope. The soil does not judge, it simply receives. And in doing so, it invites us to remember we are threads in time too. When you next kneel to touch the earth, do so gently. Press your fingers into the dirt. Feel the coolness, the grain, close your eyes. Somewhere below, a root is growing, a beetle is tunneling. A microbe is awakening. You are not separate from them. You are alongside them. You are of the same world. Let that thought settle in your breath. Let it slow your steps. Let it soften your voice. For the soil is listening, and it has waited a long, long time to speak.